some stories don't really have an ending. They just stop. They leave behind this silence that's just filled with questions. And you know, in the entire history of American crime, there's one name that just echoes in that silence. A phantom who literally stepped out of an airplane and right into folklore.
It's the one question that kicked off one of the longest, most sprawling manhunts the FBI has ever seen. And it's a question that, believe it or not, more than half a century later, still has no answer. He was just a man with a plan, a briefcase, and a secret. And after one stormy night, he was just gone. Picture this. It's the night before Thanksgiving, 1971. A man boards a totally normal flight, pulls off a crime that was honestly close to perfect, and then just disappears from 10,000 feet like he was never even there. The act was audacious, his escape became legendary, and his real identity? Well, that remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. So to really get the legend, you have to break down how he actually pulled it off. Because this wasn't some chaotic, messy affair. No. This was methodical. It was a calm, almost clinical, step-by-step operation that played out with this chilling precision in the skies over the Pacific Northwest. The whole thing unfolded like clockwork. Right after takeoff, the man calling himself Dan Cooper casually orders a drink. And then he just hands a note to a flight attendant. For the next 5 hours, he's the one in charge. He calmly negotiates for $200,000 and 4 parachutes. Once they land in Seattle, he swaps 36 passengers for his prize. Then they take off again, flying right into a storm. And at 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the dark, sprawling forests of Washington, he walked down the back stairs of the plane and vanished. Just imagine being the flight attendant handed that note. The threat was delivered with this unnerving calm. The words were simple, direct, all caps. There was no screaming, no aggression. He just calmly opened his briefcase enough for her to see a mess of wires and red sticks. That was all it took. The hijacking was very, very real. And here's what made it so tough for investigators. Every single person on the crew described this man as, well, completely unremarkable. Quiet, polite, no discernible accent. He didn't fit the profile of a hijacker at all. I mean, he even insisted on paying for his drink. His totally ordinary appearance, combined with his extraordinary calm, made him a ghost, even to the people sitting just feet away. He was the perfect cipher, hiding in plain sight. So the moment that plane finally landed, this time safely in Reno, with its back stairs still hanging open, one of the biggest and longest manhunts in American history kicked off. But the FBI wasn't just chasing a man, they were chasing a ghost who had literally dissolved into a rainstorm. The scale of this thing was just immense. The FBI file, codenamed NORJAC for Northwest Hijacking, it just exploded. Tips, leads, potential suspects pouring in from all over the country. They looked into over 800 people in the first 5 years alone. But the more they searched, the more this guy just seemed to slip through their fingers. And this was a huge part of the problem. Even the people who saw him up close couldn't agree on what he looked like. The flight attendants gave one description, passengers gave totally different details about his height, his build, even his ethnicity. It was like he was a chameleon or something. You can imagine how hard that made it to create a reliable sketch. And here's a wild little wrinkle in the whole story. The name we all know him by, DB Cooper, it's not his name. He bought the ticket under the name Dan Cooper. But a reporter, chasing a lead, mistakenly named a different local man with the initials DB as a person of interest, and the media just ran with it. The name stuck, and in a way, it's kind of fitting that the legend we know was born from a simple mistake. For 9 long years, there was absolutely nothing. No trace of Cooper, and no trace of the ransom money. The whole stack of $20 bills, all with recorded serial numbers, had vanished just like he had. And then, out of nowhere, a break. An 8-year-old kid, just digging in the sand on a family picnic, stumbles on 3 rotting bundles of cash. The FBI checked the serial numbers. It was a perfect match. But this incredible discovery, it just made the mystery deeper. The money was found miles and miles away from where the FBI thought he jumped. It raised so many more questions. How'd it get there? Why was it only a tiny fraction of the cash? And where was the rest of it? But let's go back to the plane for a second, because Cooper left one thing behind. Just one clue. Before he jumped, he took off his tie and left it on his seat. A simple, black, J.C. Penney clip-on tie. For decades, it was just a useless piece of fabric. But with modern technology, that simple tie started talking. So, a team of citizen scientists got a hold of this tie, and what they found was just mind-blowing. Using incredibly powerful electron microscopes, they found over 100,000 microscopic particles. And among them were traces of rare elements, pure titanium, specific stainless steel alloys, things that were really uncommon back in 1971 unless you worked in a very specific industry, like aerospace engineering or maybe even at Boeing itself. For the first time, there was a real clue, not just to who Cooper might be, but to what he might have done for a living. Okay, so the mystery of the man is obviously captivating, but his legacy? His legacy is something we all live with. Whether he meant to or not, when D.B. Cooper jumped out of that plane, he basically marked the end of an entire era of air travel. The numbers here really tell the story. Cooper's crime didn't happen in a vacuum. It's hard to believe, but between 1968 and 1972, there were almost 160 hijackings in the US. It was a genuine epidemic. But look at what happens after 1973. The number just plummets. Cooper's bold, successful escape was such a public spectacle that it forced everyone to finally get serious about a threat they just couldn't ignore anymore. And the changes that came because of him were profound. Think about it. Before Cooper, you could basically just walk right up to the gate. No security to speak of. His crimes shattered that trust. By 1973, universal passenger screening, metal detectors, X-raying your bags, that was the new normal. And they even installed a device on every Boeing 727 called a Cooper vane, specifically to keep anyone from ever opening the back stairs mid-flight again. The airport security we deal with today, that's a direct part of his legacy. So his impact is undeniable, but the man himself is still a complete shadow. And you know, where facts end, speculation always begins. For over 50 years, the theories about who Cooper was and what happened to him have become a kind of folklore all their own. Finally, in 2016, after 45 years of hitting dead ends, the FBI officially suspended the case. Their conclusion was pretty simple and pragmatic. A guy jumping at 10,000 feet, at night, into a freezing storm over rugged wilderness, wearing just a suit and loafers, he almost certainly didn't survive. But they never found a body. And without a body, that conclusion is never going to be a certainty. And so here we are, left with the exact same questions that have haunted this case from day one. Did he die out there in the woods, his body and the money just lost to time? Or was he skilled enough to actually survive it? The evidence on the tie points to an aerospace worker, but his calm demeanor, his knowledge of the plane, that suggests someone with military training. Or maybe was he just some guy who took a wild gamble and, against all odds, actually won? And here's one last tantalizing clue from a totally unexpected place. Researchers dug up this series of old Franco-Belgian comic books that were pretty much unknown in the US at the time. The hero's name? Dan Cooper, a test pilot who has all these crazy airborne adventures, including, yes, parachuting from planes. Is it possible the hijacker saw these comics, maybe while serving overseas? It suggests his alias wasn't random at all, but a deliberate choice. With the FBI case now cold, the chances of getting a real answer get smaller every single year. The original witnesses are aging. The physical evidence has been picked apart. And the man himself, if he even survived, would be quite old by now. And maybe that's the real legacy of D.B. Cooper. It isn't the money, it's not even the airport security. It's the enduring power of a perfect mystery. A man who became a legend simply by choosing to disappear, leaving the rest of us to just look up at the clouds and wonder.